My mom forced me to become her personal incubator and drugged me with fertility hormones. When I refused to get pregnant, she said, "Your only purpose is giving me grandchildren." Now she's finally behind bars. I was born to be harvested for babies. My parents had my sister Claire first. She was their perfect daughter until she came out as lesbian at 16. They tried everything to make her straight. Conversion therapy, religious interventions threatening to disown her. Nothing worked, and she refused to have biological children. When this happened, my parents decided they needed a backup plan. Basically, they'd focus all their reproductive hopes on me, their younger daughter, who would fulfill their grandparent dreams. I found out my sole purpose was breeding when I was 12. Before that, I just thought all girls had to practice diaper changing for hours every day. I didn't know any different. My earliest memory is being forced to carry a weighted baby doll everywhere. I must have been about 5. I remember crying because the straps cut into my shoulders and the fake baby was so heavy. But my mom insisted I needed to build maternal muscles. As soon as I hit puberty, she started giving me fertility vitamins. She said they were regular vitamins, but I found the bottles later marked with ovulation enhancers. That was pretty much how it always went. Claire got to live her life. I was groomed to be the family baby factory. The difference in how they treated us was shocking. Despite Claire being older and successful, she was written off as a disappointment for not providing grandchildren. Meanwhile, I was monitored constantly. My periods tracked my weight, watched my dating life controlled. Everything centered around my reproductive potential. I never had normal teenage experiences growing up. No sleepovers because boys might be there. No sports because injury might affect fertility. I was never allowed to have career ambitions because being a mother was supposed to be enough. So I just watched from the sidelines as other girls planned their futures. My 18th birthday involved a gynecologist appointment. Not cake and presents, but a fertility assessment disguised as a routine checkup. Once when I mentioned wanting to go to college, my mom laughed. "What's the point?" she said. "You'll just get pregnant and drop out anyway." I used to try really hard to excel in school, thinking maybe if I got good grades, they'd see me as more than breeding stock. I brought home acceptance letters to 3 universities. I'd spent months working on applications and essays about my future goals in environmental science. My mom glanced at them and said, "That's nice," before scheduling me for another fertility consultation. The letters ended up in the trash. I stopped trying after that. My sister wasn't around to support me either. She'd moved across the country to escape our parents' disapproval. Claire did try to help from a distance. She'd call and tell me I had options, that I didn't have to live the life our parents planned. But she didn't understand the daily pressure, the constant monitoring, the way they'd isolated me from anyone who might encourage independence. By the time I was 20, my parents were getting desperate. They started arranging dates with approved men from families they knew wanted large families. I tried telling my college advisor that I felt trapped. She just smiled and said, "Family expectations can be challenging, but marriage and motherhood are beautiful gifts." That's when I realized nobody was going to save me from this. I was completely alone in their reproductive prison. My parents never asked what I wanted for my future. They'd just announced plans based on their timeline for grandchildren. The men they introduced me to were all the same, traditional family-oriented, looking for wives who would prioritize childbearing above everything else. I remember being 21 when they pressured me to get engaged to David, a man 15 years older who wanted 6 children immediately. When I hesitated, my mom pulled me aside. "This is what you're for," she said. "Stop being selfish and think about giving us the grandchildren we deserve." The engagement party was horrible. Everyone congratulating David and my parents while I sat there feeling like livestock being sold at auction. During the toast, my mom announced how excited she was to finally have grandchildren, like I was just an incubator she'd been waiting to activate. I broke off the engagement a week later. My parents were furious. They said I was wasting my prime childbearing years on selfishness. The only person who supported my decision was my Aunt Rebecca. She was my mom's sister, but had always been different. Independent, career-focused, childless by choice. Whenever she visited, she'd ask me about my dreams, my interests, what I wanted to study. Normal questions that felt revolutionary to me. She'd slip me books about women's rights and career opportunities. She'd tell me I was smart, creative, and capable of anything. When I was 22, we had a family barbecue. My mom was pressuring me about dating again when Aunt Rebecca overheard. She asked to speak with me privately. We walked to her car where she said something that changed everything. "Your body belongs to you," she said firmly. "Not to your parents, not to future husbands, not to hypothetical children. You have the right to choose your own path." That conversation planted a seed. I started researching reproductive rights, women's autonomy, birth control options, things I'd never been allowed to learn about. Aunt Rebecca helped me apply for jobs and apartments secretly. She knew I needed to escape before my parents found another husband candidate. One day when I was 23, I overheard my parents talking to Dr. Harrison, our family doctor. They were discussing fertility treatments for me. My dad was saying how worried they were about my biological clock. My mom mentioned concerns about my reluctance to start a family. Dr. Harrison suggested hormone therapy to increase my egg production. They could harvest and freeze eggs to ensure future pregnancies even if I remained stubborn. I didn't understand all the medical terms, but I knew they were planning to use my body without my consent. I was terrified. That night, I called Aunt Rebecca crying. She told me to pack a bag and be ready. She was coming to get me the next morning. But I didn't make it to morning. My parents must have suspected something because they brought me tea before bed, something they'd never done. Within minutes of drinking it, my vision blurred and I felt dizzy. The last thing I remember was my mom's voice saying, "This is for your own good." I woke up in Dr. Harrison's office with an IV in my arm pumping hormones into my system. My parents sat nearby looking relieved. relieved. We're just giving your eggs a little boost, my mom explained, to help you embrace your natural maternal instincts. Dr. Harrison said the treatment would make me more receptive to pregnancy. I tried to leave, but my legs wouldn't work properly. The hormones were making me weak and disoriented. They'd essentially drugged me into compliance. For the next 3 days, they kept me sedated while pumping fertility drugs into my system. I was barely conscious during most of it. When I finally woke up clearly, I was back home. My parents explained I'd been sick with a virus but was feeling better now, except I wasn't better. My ovaries were swollen and painful. My body felt foreign, like it wasn't mine anymore. I knew they'd done something terrible. I managed to call Aunt Rebecca from my bedroom phone while my parents were asleep. She immediately drove over and found me barely able to walk. She took one look at me and called 911. I was rushed to the hospital with severe ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. The fertility drugs had nearly killed me. The doctor who treated me was horrified when she learned what had happened. Forced fertility treatments were assault, she explained. What my parents did was illegal. Detective Walsh arrived while I was still in the ICU. She specialized in reproductive crimes and had seen cases like mine before. The fertility drugs could have caused permanent damage, she said. Your parents essentially poisoned you to try to force pregnancy. My parents hired lawyers immediately. They claimed I'd consented to fertility treatments, that I'd been trying to get pregnant for months. But Aunt Rebecca had been documenting everything. She'd saved recordings of my parents discussing their plans. She had evidence of the coercion. The medical records also told the truth. The hormone levels in my system were dangerously high. No legitimate doctor would have prescribed those doses. Dr. Harrison lost his medical license. He'd been helping families force fertility treatments on unwilling daughters for years. I wasn't his first victim. My parents were arrested for assault and conspiracy. The trial lasted 6 months. I had to testify about years of reproductive coercion. It was humiliating having to describe how they'd monitored my body, tracked my cycles, and planned my reproductive future without my consent. But I also felt powerful. For the first time, I was telling my story in a place where people had to listen and believe me. The jury found them guilty on all counts. My parents got 5 years in prison. Dr. Harrison got 10 years for multiple cases of medical assault. Claire flew back for the sentencing. She held my hand as the judge read the verdict. I finally had a sister who supported me. Aunt Rebecca became my legal guardian even though I was an adult. She helped me apply to college and start therapy to process the trauma. The hardest part was unlearning 23 years of conditioning. I'd been taught my only value was reproductive. Everything else felt foreign, but slowly I started discovering who I was beyond my ovaries. I loved marine biology, environmental science, and ocean conservation. I got into university with a full scholarship. My application essay about escaping reproductive trafficking won a national writing contest. College was overwhelming at first. I'd never been allowed to make my own decisions about anything. Having choices felt paralyzing, but I had good support. Aunt Rebecca paid for therapy. Claire visited regularly. I made friends who accepted my weird gaps in normal experiences. My favorite professor, Dr. Martinez, taught environmental policy. She became a mentor, helping me channel my experience into advocacy work. I started speaking at conferences about reproductive coercion. My story helped other women recognize and escape similar situations. By my senior year, I was working with lawmakers to strengthen protections against forced fertility treatments. My parents' crime had purpose now. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in marine biology and a minor in women's studies. Aunt Rebecca and Claire cheered louder than anyone. My parents were released after serving 3 years. They tried to contact me claiming they'd changed and just wanted to apologize. I ignored every attempt. They'd stolen my adolescence and young adulthood. I owed them nothing, not even forgiveness. The restraining order I'd filed kept them from my graduation. They couldn't see me receive awards or celebrate my accomplishments. Claire and I became close again. She'd married her girlfriend Sarah, and they were happy with their chosen family of friends. They never pressured me about relationships or asked when I'd have children. They just loved me for who I was becoming. I dated occasionally in college, but carefully. I was hyper-aware of any sign that men saw me as breeding stock rather than a whole person. Most couldn't handle my history anyway. The idea of parents forcing fertility treatments was too disturbing for many people to process, but I met Marcus in graduate school. He was studying environmental law and understood reproductive rights as human rights issues. He never asked about my future family plans. He supported my career goals and treated my body as belonging to me alone. We got engaged after 2 years together. The proposal was simple and private. No pressure about timelines or expectations. Our wedding was small. Aunt Rebecca walked me down the aisle. Claire was my maid of honor. My parents weren't invited or informed. Some relatives boycotted because they thought I should forgive family. I didn't care. My chosen family was more supportive than blood ever was. Marcus and I have been married 3 years now. People sometimes ask about children, but we deflect or change the subject. The truth is, I'm still deciding. For so long, pregnancy was forced on me as an inevitability that I can't separate it from trauma. Maybe someday I'll want biological children. Maybe I'll adopt. Maybe I'll remain child-free. The choice is finally mine to make. I work for an environmental nonprofit focusing on ocean conservation. I travel frequently for research and love my career. My work has taken me to coral reefs in Australia, marine preserves in Costa Rica, and research stations in Antarctica. Each trip reminds me that I escaped the small, controlled world my parents tried to trap me in. I have my own life now. Aunt Rebecca is retired, but volunteers with organizations helping women escape reproductive coercion. She says I inspired her advocacy. Claire and Sarah adopted 2 children last year. Watching them parent with respect and support makes me understand what healthy families look like. Sometimes I get letters from women who heard my story. They describe similar family pressure and ask for advice about escaping. I always respond. I share resources for reproductive rights organizations, legal aid, and counseling services that helped me. Each woman who breaks free from reproductive trafficking is a victory. We're slowly changing the culture that treats women as incubators. My parents tried to contact me again last month. They sent a card claiming they understood now that they'd been wrong. I threw it away without reading past the first line. Some betrayals are too deep for forgiveness. They stole my agency for decades, but their control over me is finally broken. I choose my career, my relationships, my travel, my future. Everything they tried to decide for me. My body belongs to me. My reproductive choices are mine. My life is my own creation, not their imposed blueprint. Last week, I got promoted to lead researcher on a major coral restoration project. The work will take me underwater in 6 different countries. It's exactly the kind of life I dreamed about as a teenager when I wasn't allowed to dream. Adventure, purpose, autonomy. Marcus supports every opportunity. He's proud of my work and never suggests I should slow down for hypothetical future pregnancies. We're partners in the truest sense. He sees me as a whole person, not a potential vessel for his offspring. Sometimes I think about the parallel universe where I never escaped, where I'm trapped in suburban motherhood hating every minute. That version of me would have had multiple children by now, all for my parents' satisfaction, not my own desires. Instead, I'm writing this from a research vessel in the Pacific. The sun is setting over the ocean and dolphins are swimming beside us. I'm exactly where I chose to be, doing work I love with people who respect my autonomy. It's the life I fought to create. My parents' plan to use my body as their grandchild factory failed completely. I became something they never imagined I could be. A scientist, an advocate, a wife on my own terms, a woman who owns her choices and her future. The best revenge against reproductive coercion is living the life you choose, proving that women are more than our biological functions. I'm 30 now, established in my career, traveling the world, making discoveries that matter. I'm everything they said I couldn't be. And if I ever do decide to have children, it will be because I want them, not because someone else decided my body was their property. My reproductive choices are mine alone. That's how it should be for every woman everywhere.